Well, it is Friday. Friday, May 22nd. The Star Wars movie came out today. I've yet to see it, but I think I'll see it pretty soon here. I love the Star Wars movies. And in the last bit, I've filled up yet another notebook, so another one bites the dust. And so I guess I'll read something from it because, I filled it up. So this is from 2 days ago, when I was watching a movie. I think it was called Demon Mind. So I watched this movie, and it was essentially a mix of Hamlet, Romeo and Juliet, with an end kind of like Frankenstein. The attacked, crippled man from A Clockwork Orange plays a medieval man of medicine, science, and the occult variety, called a charlatan, among other things. He's hired to aid a duke in curing some hereditary ailment, or as the balding Gandalf-esque character deems it, a disorder which drives unsavory tendencies amongst that family's gene pool. And namely, as the central plot is incestuous lacings where the Duke's two children, Emile and Elizabeth, are shown to have quite a deep and sensual attachment to one another. And as it would seem, however, and realized eventually by the Renaissance old man, that all disorder occurring was of the Duke's own devising, willing it to all transpire in a semi-stagnant state of grief over his wife's suicide, going mad, and deciding to end his genetic curse. He shoots his hired wizard on a mission to eliminate both the on-the-run siblings at that point, and succeeding in regards to shooting Emile, his son. However, before he could fire a final shot into his daughter before biting a bullet himself, is engulfed by an angry mob of peasants and workers under his jurisdiction who were stirred into a religious frenzy by a raving preacher, dying in the end with a flaming crucifix planted in his torso and daughter onlooking. And so, like Hamlet, the film focuses on the decay and depravity of what the communist or Karl Marx adjacent type would refer to as the bourgeoisie, or ruling class, as well as onto Emile killed while in a lucid state, and after having killed a girl just prior in the psychotic episode as well, going even madder at the hallucination that it may well have been his sister Elizabeth. And like the star-crossed young lovers intentionally separated by familial disputes in Romeo and Juliet, ended nonetheless in the puppeteering Duke's death, like Macbeth. To say the long short of it, it's a very Shakespearean movie. And I guess I didn't really get to the Frankenstein bit, but that's because, they rushed his house and stuff, but that's not that crazy. But, coming from the 1970s, I do wonder how much the incestuous implications, along with, noted predatory projection from the father Duke, how much of that film is taken inspiration from or in connection to a certain prominent think tanks, namely in France during the 1970s, who had more of a open outlook towards consideration of pedophilic practice, because much of what the Duke does is diagnosed by the doctor as sort of a projection of his own urges and wants. So that would give more of a, I guess, pedophilic practice to the incestuousness. And with the 1970s, it was very similar to there's an organization called NAMBLA, National Association for Male Boy Love, National Assembly, something like that. It's a very interesting, it's a very fascinating subset of things, but it's genuinely a fascinating, bunch, and it's not like, the whole, I know this was a big stir a few years ago, back at the height of the sort of identity politics panic, in regards to, like, sexuality and gender and stuff, which I still see as pretty much a bullshit culture war distraction, even though it was one of the most fun debates to participate in. But anyway, it was like, Where was I going with that? I don't know, to be honest with you. Right. In France, there were philosophers. What's his name? He wrote The History of Sexuality, was part of it, if I recall. But in the 1970s, there was this movement to sort of attempt to intellectualize that and destigmatize it in a very philosophical sense from some prominent thinkers. Just as an interesting bit, But then, yeah, that's just an interesting bit from a movie called Demon Mind, which I then wrote a poem after that quote. It begins with a quote from a song called Chasing a Ghost by the Longshot. So anyway, hang from the chandelier from a long, long time ago, all closed, open ticket with nowhere to go. Thrill long since shrill churns on, regardless of correlation, sitting, lamenting, till well after cold and still, wasted, untasted capsule pills. And there we go. I dropped something. Anyway, there we go. That was the poem I wrote after that. Now, I'm not even going to start on this right now, but the boys, I have some thoughts on that, and I'm not even going to write those down because it's so fucking hard to compartmentalize into something, because it's like, there's so much to take into account that it has to be so back and forth that writing it out seems sort of impossible. But I can explain it with my head, with my words. I'm getting good enough to do that out loud, so that's pretty cool. Then I also have a thing, because I rewatched the series 11/22/63, which is probably my favorite television series ever made, to be honest. Like, I love Supernatural, don't get me wrong, but I've not seen anything as much as I've watched 11/22/63, like, on my own accord. Like, I love the book. Stephen King is an amazing writer, and that's one of the most amazing books he's written. But yeah, I did write something on that, and I think I'm going to turn that into a zine, and that will actually get done for a change in terms of the zines I plan on making. Actually, a lot of stuff will get done. It's a very interesting time right now. But, happiness is in a full coffee cup, so that's kind of the drive. I don't know. And that's from a poem I wrote, so I guess I'll read that too, since I said that. Anyway, happiness is in a full coffee cup. I fell into you, now I'm in a rut, malignant, crucial crutch. Ash and dust dissolves into specks as the river rushes, apathetic end scene collapse, inward crushing calamity, gravity surpassing Atlas's strength, wits extended on cut wavelength, happiness, ill-brought social trend, innate emotion with artificially induced elevation. Just an interesting idea about happiness. I did sort of start this interesting attempt at intellectualizing happiness. I might do something with that. I don't know. I have a lot that I could do things with. Then from this new notebook, I think I wrote some interesting stuff. Yeah, I wrote out the plan for that zine for the 11/22/63 thing. Anyway, so I wrote another poem, and I guess this will be the last thing I read. I don't know. So, trapped, partial paralysis, pressure piles up, all alleviated itch. Sorry, I got distracted by the fucking cars. Anyway, I'm gonna restart that. Trapped, partial paralysis, pressure piles up, all alleviated itch, excursion Ari, hypnotizing self-bewitching, average calm alarming, I just need a sip of morning coffee, joyous solution, a killing spree? And that's the end of that. I don't know. It was sort of like, I was probably tired as fuck when I wrote that, to be honest. I don't know. Just a funny little thing. And yeah, that's that. Things are moving very interestingly. Third time's the charm. That's all I have to say for right now. I have every fucking ounce of my being is telling me that everything will work, and I know that everything will work with what I'm planning and stuff nowadays. So yeah.